Dr. Sharma, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you just please turn on your camera? We'll just start with a brief
I shall
introduction.
do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Namaskar and a very warm welcome to everyone joined in today on our Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. This talk is being organized by the Central Zoo Authority, New Delhi, as part of the ongoing Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Mahotsav is a 75-week-long celebration to commemorate 75 years of India's independence, which falls on the 15th of August 2022. Central Zoo Authority is taking this celebration forward through a massive outreach campaign entitled Conservation to Coexistence, The People Connect, under the helm of which we will be showcasing 75 species of conservation priority and 75 zoos for a duration of 75 weeks, celebrating one species and one zoo each week. We are currently in week 6 of the celebration with the four-horned antelope or the Chosinger as the species in focus and the Kakatiya Zoological Park, Telengana as the zoo in focus. Joined in today with us, we have Dr. Kaustubh Sharma, who will be speaking to us on the Know Your Species part. He will be talking to us about the four-horned antelope. A brief introduction of Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma has over 19 years of experience in the field of ecological research and conservation. He has pursued his doctorate on the four-horned antelope in central India from the Bombay Natural History Society. Post his doctorate, he has been involved with national and international organization on snow leopard conservation. He currently works as the International Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program. His research interests lie in population ecology, ecological modeling, and conservation biology. He will talk to us today more on the species in focus of the week. And now I would like to request Dr. Sharma to please commence with his talk.
Thank you, Arundhati. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Just give me a second while I'll share my screen, please. Perfect. I'm hoping you all can see my screen.
Yes, that's visible.
Fantastic. And you see a four-horned antelope, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So good evening one more time, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Chosinger or the four-horned antelope, which for sure is one of the least studied and least known antelopes in India. And it's quite surprising because whoever discovered the species first was so intrigued by the species that it was given a name as its Latin name is Tetracerus quadricornis. Both of the terms mean four horns. So it's literally the name of the species is four horns, four horns. Now, in 2003, I was living next to Panna Tiger Reserve. I was working in the Panna Tiger Reserve, which is one of the most beautiful landscapes that defines the tropical dry deciduous forest in India and is also cut across by one of the country's cleanest rivers, the River Ken. As one of the routine surveys, I was standing on our vehicle and looking for animals with one of our field assistants, Uttam, looking on the other side. Suddenly, our driver stopped and felt a rush of adrenaline go through my veins. He had spotted a leopard walking on the road. At that time, to spot a leopard was a rare sight in Panna Tiger Reserve. Strangely enough, at the same time, my field assistant, Uttam, who I believe had the best pair of eyes, nudged me and said, "Sir Chosinger." Now, I looked at him in disbelief and shook almost in state of shock, and I complained, "Hey, Uttam, you need to get an eye test. That's a leopard, not a Chosinger." Well, he said, "No, sir, look at the left side of the leopard." And to my utter surprise, there was a Chosinger frozen as a statue while the leopard walked within 6 feet from it. Its only cover at that point in time was the short golden grass that made the Chosinger remain invisible to its predator, the leopard in this case. The leopard walked past the Chosinger, and the moment it was within about 25 feet or so from the Chosinger leapt, took a few very conspicuous bouts of leaps, and then strutted in the understory and vanished in the golden grass of Panna Tiger Reserve's tropical dry deciduous forest. This little observation of the interaction, or let me say the lack of interaction between a Chosinger and a leopard, helped me define the direction of the work that defined my PhD work, and also the first ever detailed study on the Chosinger anywhere in the world. Cut back to 2003, when the then director of Bombay Natural History Society, Dr. Asad Rahmani, offered me the position to work on this project, which was funded by Department of Science and Technology with the goal to study the four-horned antelope. I actually found myself in a very interesting place. To begin with, I was coming from having done a master's in physics, so I've had very little idea about studying ecology, but I had a few years of experience of studying birds, and I was interested in wildlife, so that's what I was coming from. But more interestingly, whoever I spoke about it, people were skeptical that I won't even get to see a Chosinger. Forget about to do a study on it to even come up with a PhD at some point in time. After all, it's not by chance that a species as interesting as the Chosinger was so poorly studied. Now, if you look carefully in this picture, you will notice the Chosinger camouflages brilliantly within its habitat. And it's no wonder that the leopard missed spotting it, right? That's what we spoke about a few minutes ago. Since there was no previous research on the species, it meant that I had a blank slate to work on. Whatever we were observing or seeing or recording, it was coming out for the first time. But on the counter side, there were few references, few citations, few works, or few little research to build our hypothesis on. And that's where what really helped us at this point in time was the rich library of the Bombay Natural History Society. I was able to find publications dating back to 1867 and 1888 that had mentions of Chosinger and anecdotal records, observations, and even some information about their distribution. We also conducted a thorough review of where the Chosinger is found and where it was found historically. Uh, those were pre-internet days or pre-social media days, so most of the communication was still happening on letters. Small proportion was coming through online questionnaires, but internet was a luxury around those days. So we sent out questionnaire surveys to determine the species distribution across the country. We found that Chosinger was historically confined to tropical dry deciduous forests in India and also parts of southern Nepal, that entire belt which constitutes a tropical dry deciduous forest in Nepal. It is not surprising that the species distribution has become more fragmented, confining the Chosinger into pockets. To understand the species better, we needed to understand its behavior and ecology better. And let me just take you, yeah, so this is basically how the distribution of the species had changed over the years. So what we did, we went to Panna Tiger Reserve. Now in Panna Tiger Reserve, we observed the species. In those 4 years, I had somewhere around 700 or more sightings of the species. Cumulatively, we were able to total more than 3,000 minutes of observations of Chosinger. For a species that was seldom seen in the wild, this was a big step forward and helped us decode the mysteries of this otherwise lesser known bovid. In fact, just to mention here, Chosinger, which is just about 20 kilos in weight, is the closest relative of nilgai, which is the largest largest member of the same family, and both of them found in parts of India. Now, for the first time, we were able to classify Chosinger into different age groups based on their horns. And what's really unique, four horns, right? Females, on the other hand, do not sport any horns, but the three pictures you see in the lower line represent three age classes of the Chosinger. The one on the extreme left is a young male who's just got the two pair of horns. What's very interesting is, though, with the Chosinger, there are certain areas where seldom people see animals with four horns, and especially towards the southern Indian forests. A lot of people don't even see the many individuals with two pairs of horns. What causes it? Whether it's a subspecies or whether it's a fringe effect of a species distribution range, we don't know yet. So please remember, the species still remains lesser known to the world. So based on their horn length, it turns out that males with bigger front pair of horns were the most attractive, and perhaps they were the stronger ones, because these were the guys with males with the longest pair of the front pair of horns were the individuals which were most often seen with a mate, as opposed to those which had shorter pair of front horns. They were like one of those youngsters growing up trying to make a mark. These were the guys who had survived long enough to be able to defend their territories, defend their areas, defend the females as well. We knew that the Chosinger is a solitary species, but we needed to understand how they interacted. After all, you need to find mates and also feed the young, right? And for both of these interactions, you need somehow to be able to communicate with each other. And since it's a solitary species, it needs to find a way to communicate to other Chosingas, maybe to tell them that stay away from my area, or this is my territory, or just I'm here, if you're interested. Who knows? What we found was that the Chosingas use typically three modes of communications: males, females, and fawns. Even fawns that are following their moms, they proactively defecate on middens. Middens are nothing but heaps of fecal droppings. Interestingly enough, these are not species specific. The same midden would have a Chausinger come and defecate on it. If it's in the range of a nilgai, the nilgai would also defecate on it. If there is a chinkara using the same area, the chinkara may also come and defecate on it. Although the three species do have some sort of a niche separation between them, Chausinger is more of a it would be more in between thick forests and open forests. Nilgai, Enparna at least, they were more into the thicker forests, whereas the Chinkara, they would extensively use savanna kind of forests out there. And lastly, of course, they they also communicate over short distances through their very distinct low frequency calls. We used to call, we defined it as pronk, and it's almost like a soft nasal cough kind of a sound. And that's what we've heard them give as a anti-predatory alarm call in a slightly different pitch. It would be used by males when approaching females for courting, and it would also be used in a different frequency by mothers calling out their young ones, who would often be hidden in these little spaces, as you can see this little fawn hiding in a little thicket where nobody else could see it. By the way, another point to mention here is a lot of times people do bring in Chausinger fawns to zoos and other rescue centers saying, oh, it was abandoned by the mother. Please understand, Chausinger is a species which does not all the time move with its fawns. These little fawns are left on their own, entirely on their own, with their ability to hide. And if someone chances upon them, there's a very less likelihood that the mother would be around, because she's trying to take your attention away from where the fawns are. Anyway, and they also the other way they communicate is also their preorbital glands to mark grass twigs. Now, preorbital glands are these glands that you see right in front of their eyes. Over here, if you can see, I should try and get a it's a pointer. If you see these little pointers here, these are the preorbital glands, and they literally turn their head sideways and poke it against twigs or sharp branch. And these are like social media wall postings. the middens and these preorbital gland markers are like social media postings, which Chosinger has used to communicate with individuals, other individuals of the same species. Now we know a little bit. We knew a little bit about how they communicated with each other, but Chosinger ultimately is not a predator. It is food for the predators. And why would a herbivore that is under constant risk of being eaten up by a predator, prefer to stay solitary? It turns out that Chosinger is also a finicky eater. We conducted cafeteria experiments in a zoo with a few captive individuals, and also used our observations to find out that they seem to consume fruits, flowers, pods, and fresh leaves as opposed to grass. Now, it's logical for a small-bodied animal that has a small stomach and high metabolism. After all, it cannot eat a lot of low-quality food. There's not enough space in its stomach for that, right? And instead, what it relies on is eating small quantities of high nutrition food, and such food is often at a premium. You don't have uh, too much of high quality food in the forest, and one reason why it seems the Chosinger prefers to be solitary. Moreover, the Chosinger also has a very distinct behavioral trait, which is that to avoid being eaten up. Unlike many other herbivores that use multiple eyes multiple eyes and multiple bodies to stay alive, by using the herding tactics, the Chosinger relies on its ability to hide and deceive. In fact, that's also believed to be one of the reasons why the species may have evolved two distinct pair of horns as an indicator of sexual fitness, as opposed to bright colors like you see in nilgai or blackbucks, or exorbitant horns or antlers as you see in other herbivores. It seems as if the species evolved this alternate display mechanism, or alternate display to show its fitness to other individuals, whether it's the other males as well as females. Now, to hide and deceive, the Chosinger needs an understory and a grass that is just right, neither too tall nor too short. Not too short. If it's too tall, the Chosinger gets lost in it. If it's too short, then it's completely exposed. I'm sure many of you may have seen a Chosinger, though please don't be disheartened if you have not. This is typically how you usually get to see a four-horned antelope or a Chosinger. All you get to see it somewhere blending between the grasses, and you see a bit of its ears. A very distinct V-shaped silhouette is what you see. I would actually say it's perhaps more difficult to see and photograph a Chosinger than even a tiger in many parts where it is found. So a few years of surveys suggested that Chosinger was definitely there in Panna Tiger Reserve, but it was not everywhere. And there were certain areas where the Chosinger was more likely to be seen, and some areas where through thorough combing would never lead us to any Chosinger sightings. And this is where our natural history observations helped us develop a predictive model for Chosinger, uh, where where we were able to understand through the phenology of the forest to understand where they are. Now, you remember I mentioned they love fruits, flowers, but a single species of a tree can only fruit or flower for a short duration of time. Now, this is typically how the phenology uh, changes across the year for a four-horned antelope or a Chosinger. Uh, at a time in a year, only one or two species or 3-4 species are blooming. Now, if you are in an area where you have multiple species, then you're likely to get food for multiple durations for throughout the year. But if you're living in a monoculture like a teak forest, or let's say just a forest which has nothing but tendu, you will get food for a few weeks, but then you will have to move elsewhere. And consider it like this. Suppose this is a forest, and these are the trees that are fruiting in the summer. In the monsoon, you will have another set of trees blooming. In the winter, you'll have another set of trees blooming. Now, if this is how you are, this is a good area for you. And that's exactly what we did find in case of Chosinger, that they would tend to typically use areas which had high diversity of tree species, which are likely to provide food for the Chosinger throughout the year. Now, that seems to be the key to a Chosinger, selecting very specific habitats within tropical dry deciduous forests. And in other words, they are where you have a high species richness of trees. Now, why is this important? You'll be surprised to know that 40% of the world's potential tiger habitat is tropical dry deciduous forest. And let's try and pause it somehow. Oops. Yeah, okay. Much of these are under tremendous stress now, but a large part of it is also doing well under different levels of protection as a tiger reserve or a national park or a wildlife sanctuary, at least in India. This little antelope in retrospect is an indicator of the high species richness of the vegetation in India's tropical dry deciduous forests. So that's really a very quick 15, 16 minutes of an introduction to this very charismatic species, the Chosinger or the four-horned antelope, as many people know it as. With that, I'd like to stop here, and please feel free to ask a question if you have one, or please feel free to share an experience if you have one about the four-horned antelope. Yeah, with that, I'd like to stop here. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for the very informative talk on Chosinger. We will be taking in questions towards the end of the session. We'll now move on to the latter part of our talk today, which is on the Know Your Zoo. And we have with us for the Know Your Zoo section is Ms. Arpana Syar, who is the District Forest Officer and Officer in charge of Kakatiya Zoological Park. Ms. Arpana, are you there? Yeah. Good evening. A brief introduction of Ms. Arpana to the audience. Ms. Syal has done her post-graduation in forestry from the Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. She's a 2012 batch Telengana cadre forest officer and has over 9 years of experience in the department working towards the betterment and management of forests and wildlife. She will be speaking to us today on the history, vision, and status of the Kakatiya Zoological Park. Over to you, ma'am. So you can stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just share my
I'm
presentation.
trying to stop. It's just not stopping. Sorry.
Yes. So thank you, Arundhati, and good evening to all. So in Telangana state, we have two zoos. One is in Hyderabad, Nehru Zoological Park. The other one is Kakatiya Zoological Park, which is located in Warangal urban district of Telangana state. So right now I am the in charge of this zoo, and my presentation will be regarding the history, vision, and what are the present activities we are doing in our zoo. So if I talk about the history of the zoo, actually this zoo was established as a Van Vigyan Kendra. And it was established in the year 1985. And in 1987, it was open to the public. There were only two enclosures, the birds and the reptiles enclosures were there. And in 2006, this zoo was recognized as a mini zoo by the Central Zoo Authority. And in 2014, it was upgraded as a small zoo. And by the Zoo and Park Authority of Telangana State renamed it as a Kakatiya Zoological Park because of the historical significance of this area. Because Kakatiya dynasty ruled this area, the Warangal area, between the 12th and 14th century. That's why it was renamed as Kakatiya Zoological Park in 2017. We see the objectives to conserve the endangered species, especially the ex situ conservation of all the endangered species, to promote wildlife education and the awareness, and to make people to understand the importance of the environment and its protection, to exhibit the fauna in more naturalistic surrounding, and to rescue and rehabilitate the wild animal. And the mission this zoo is to complement and strengthen the conservation effort, particularly of wild fauna, housed in large enriched habitat with good health, nutrition care, apart from the research and conservation education. So this is the layout map of our plan. This is the entrance, and these are the enclosure for large carnivores. And here in black color, we have this display zone of all the deers and antlers. And here we have the display zone for all the reptiles and crocodiles. And here we have display zone for all the birds and pheasants. So total area of this zoo is 19.22 hectares. And if we see the particulars of this area particulars of this Kakatiya Zoological Park, so total area is 19.22 hectare. And area of animal house or area for the animal enclosures is 6.63 hectare, and for the other support facilities like admin building, zoo hospital, feed store, and fodder area, we have around 5.5 hectares area. And for visitors facilities, we have 2 hectares area, and 6 hectare area is under green cover, just to provide a natural environment to or natural habitat like condition to all the wild animals. So if we talk about the zoo administration, so this is a small zoo. There is no separate post of curator of zoo. So District Forest Officer Warangal Urban and Jangaon is the in charge of zoo. But we have a separate structure like for the separate forest range officer, section officer, and 3 beat officers for the administration of this zoo. And we have animal keepers, lawn workers, and some security personnel. Altogether, we have 34 members are there. And we have a very small zoo hospital. There we have one veterinary assistant surgeon and one veterinary compounder is there. So this is all about the zoo administration. So in zoo, we have mainly 9 sections. The first section is animal section. The 6th section specifically looks after all the animals and all the animal enclosures which we have in our zoo. The veterinary section which looks after the health and the hygiene, as well as the food quality which we are providing to all animals. Then we have a feed and store section, gardening and landscaping section, maintenance section, sanitation section, administration section, security section, and water and supply section. So I'll discuss in detail about all these sections. We talk about the animal collection. So we have total 43 species and 395 specimens. We have 10 species of mammals, 28 species of birds, and 5 species of reptiles. And here in Kakatiya Zoological Park, we have 14 open enclosures, 27 closed enclosures, and 2 dry moated enclosures for all the wild animals. So this is the display zone, like I have already shown in the map. We have display zone for large carnivores. We have leopard and in that zone, and small carnivores like we have jungle cats, bear enclosure, crocodile, herbivores. We have good numbers of deers and antelopes. Aviary, we have exotic as well as native species of birds, and pheasantry, where we have a pheasant, different type of pheasants. So if we talk about the captive breeding, in our zoo, Kakatiya Zoological Park, the Chosinger and ostrich, they have successfully bred in zoo under the captive breeding by providing special arrangements. In special arrangements, during the breeding season, we generally keep the mating couple away from all the population, and we have special enclosure for that. And we just keep them away from the public interference. So in past, we have seen the successful breeding of Chosinger as well as the ostrich and some other species also. Here we can see the peafowl and even mouse deer and ostrich, some other species also. So this was about the breeding activities. The second section is feed and store section. Actually, this section, it plays very important role just to check the quality and the quantity of the food which we are providing to our animals. So we have our veterinary section, which daily. They just check the quality of the food, then they disinfect that with all the meat and all the vegetables and all the fruits. They just ensure the disinfection, and after that they weigh it and provide to and give to animal keepers. As per the chart schedule, we have already prepared a schedule for the feed of all the animals. So in Telangana, generally, during summer season, the temperature, it reaches up to 40 degree, even more than 40 degree also. So summer management is the most important work which we do during this season, just to protect all the wild animals from the heat, from the all the side effects of the summers. So here you can see this is our leopard enclosure, and here we have used the water sprinklers during the summer season, and this is the cooler we have used in our leopard enclosure. Here you can see the jute mats which we have placed in the windows to protect from the sun heat, and here you can see the cooler in our mouse deer enclosure. And with the water gun, the water spray is being done. This is our bear enclosure, and green shade nets are covered. This is our reptiles enclosure, and green shade nets are covered. The enclosures are covered with the green shade net so that these animals can be protected from the heat. Here also you can see in bird enclosure, the bamboo mats are being used on the top to protect them from the heat. And here this is the rhea bird, and here also we have put the shade nets. So this is the most important work during the summer season. All the zoo staff, which is being carried out by our zoo during the summer season. So this is the sanitation section. Maintenance of hygiene is the most important to check the zoonotic diseases as well as some animal diseases in the zoo. So regularly, this sanitation section people, regularly they do the spray of disinfectants in all the enclosure. Food bath is being given, periodically deworming of the animals are being done, and cleaning of the enclosures are being done on regular basis. And veterinary section, which plays very important role to check the health of all the animals. And so here in Kakatiya Zoological Park, we have one small hospital, and we have one zoo veterinary assistant surgeon, Dr. Praveen. He is on deputation from animal husbandry, and with one veterinarian assistant. So regularly they observe the animals, they observe the health of animal and inspect and also check the sanitation, check whether proper sanitation is there, and the quality of food which is being given to animals are proper or not. And whenever it is required, the medical treatment is also given to all the animals by the veterinary section. So here you can see the bear. The treatment is being given for the abscess. This is the wound for that wound. And here is the leopard, a female leopard. She was suffering from the gastritis. The treatment was given and she was well after that. Zoo staff, as we all know, the zoo staff is prone to the zoonotic diseases. So to check the health of all the staff, we regularly conduct a medical camp at our zoo. So twice in a year, we conduct these medical camps. Like this is the medical camp done in the February and December 19, and eye testing camps also we are doing, different medical camps we are doing in our zoo park. And as we know, there is a sudden increase in the cases of COVID. So we are following all the protocols, COVID protocols, like we are checking the temperatures, we are giving the sanitizers to the visitors, we are also maintaining the social distancing. Plus, this COVID vaccination, that co-vaccine is given to all the zoo staff. And we have ensured that all the zoo staff, they take this vaccine just to prevent any kind of infection in future. So zoo not only play important role in conservation breeding, but it plays a very important role in education and awareness. So here in Kakatiya Zoological Park, we celebrate I'll say every environment day, every important environment day is being celebrated in our zoo. Be it wetland day, be it forestry day, wildlife week, environment day, biodiversity day, all days are being celebrated in our zoo. And here we involve the students from the schools and colleges just to create awareness among them. So for that, we have one environment education center in our zoo. There we have a small museum and a display room. We have some mural displays there, and here you can see the students. And we also have one audio visual room. There we generally display the movies, wildlife movies, latest wildlife movies, and we interact with all the students and visitors also in this room. And we also have a library. Generally, students, they come and they read books here. And we also have a bird trail. A small trail is there, and we have a small water bodies. So some water birds are also there. So this bird trail is being also organized in our zoo. We have different signages board, interpretation boards for the visitors. So just to create the awareness about the wildlife and its importance. This here, I will take 1 or 2 minutes to explain this program. This is an awareness program, which is One Darshini program. Actually, in Telangana, whole Telangana state, this One Darshini program is being organized. Here, the forest department, they collaborate with the district education department or education department, and for 2 months, January and February, 2 times or 3 times in a week, the 50 students, they are taken to the forest area and to the zoo. It's a whole day program, 1 day program, where in the morning, where forest department, we organize transportation and food to all the students. So early morning, we just uh, send a bus or transportation facility to the students. We take them inside the forest area, nearby forest area. Then they come to zoo daytime, and here we organize different type of activities like quiz competition, some drawing competition, and also some kind of snake show or some interaction with the some NGOs like Friends of Snake Society NGO is there with them, just to create awareness about the serpents and some other wild species of this area. So it's a very good program, and it maximum students from the, especially from the government schools, they have already participated in this program, and they are very happy to be a part of this program. In our zoo, we have a van, mobile van, or it's a publicity van. Here you can see this is the van from the outside. This is a vehicle from the inside. So generally, whenever there is some program like Republic Day celebration, Independence Day celebration, some kind of famous, you can say jatras or belas are there, we just send this van there, and maximum people, they get some idea about the wildlife and its importance to, by seeing this van, and by all the pamphlets we are distributing during all these programs. So it's a very good van, very good, I can say, very good way to generate the awareness about the wildlife and its importance. So in Kakatiya Zoo, we have very dedicated rescue team, which is headed by our veterinary doctor, Dr. Praveen. We have total 7 members in that team, and they have rescued maximum all the wild animals like leopards, sloth bear, nilgai, deers from nearby areas like Warangal district is there, Karimnagar, and some Adilabad distant areas also. So here you can see, I'll just show you some more pictures. This is a temple, and you can see a bear here. And this is inside the temple. So our Dr. Praveen, he darted and with the help of tranquilized gun, and then it was rescued, and the treatment was given, and here they were transported. They were captured and transported to the forest area, nearby forest area, and they were rehabilitated back or released back into the forest area. So this we can see, and here also I will tell you, this is the bear. Actually, what happens, this local people, they put this clutches, or we can say snares, to keep these animals away from their agricultural field. So this bear, it trapped in the clutches, and his leg, its left leg, you can see, totally got injured. So our rescue team, they rescued this animal. They took this animal to Nehru Zoological Park. The proper treatment was given, and now this bear is in Nehru Zoological Park. It is still there and healthy. So this is all about the rescue team and the rescue operations which are being carried out by the rescue team of our zoo. And if we see the total number of animals which have been rescued by our team till date from 2012. So total they have rescued more than 400 species, more than 400 animals, which includes 17 species. If we see the visitors and the zoo revenue which we are getting, the revenue we are getting from these visitors. So here are the details from the year 2009-10 to 2021. So here we can see the revenue is increasing from 9-10 to 19-20, but due to COVID last year, we could not get that much revenue, but still it is on the high side. And this is we keep our zoo closed on Mondays, and these are the entry fees and some other fees which we charge from the visitors. So if we talk about the visitors, because large number of visitors, they are visiting this zoo. And so we have developed a lot of visitors amenities in our zoo, like RO drinking water, drinking facilities are there, battery vehicles are there, pagodas, or you can say gazebos or sitting areas. We have washroom facility, environment education center, we have canteen, wheelchair, sitting arrangements, and first aid kit. So many facilities we have already developed, and in future we'll be developing more facilities for the visitors. Here you can see some facilities which we have already developed for our visitors. And animal adoption scheme. So this scheme we started in the year 2017, and just to publicize this same scheme, we had a series of meetings with all the NGOs, different elite clubs of this area, like Lion Club and some other clubs, industrialists and public representatives. So we had a lot of meetings, and as a result of these meetings, in the year 2020 and 21, there were 130 people who adopted the zoo animal of our zoo under this scheme. So this is what we have right now in our zoo. And there are some future developments which we have in our minds and we have proposed in our master plan. So these are the future developments I will discuss. First, we have already some enclosures, but we have to create. There's a need to create some new enclosures like reptile home, water bird aviary, some other carnivores and some other herbivores enclosures. And whatever enclosure we have to enrich those enclosures like cage furniture. We have to keep some play tools and machans, etc., to enrich these enclosures, and some repairs and renovations are required. And some proposals. Actually, we have some enclosure we already ready with us, and there are some animals which we need to acquire, either a way of exchange or a gift. So on the priority basis, which else I can say, the gaur, hog deer, tiger, barking deer, and Shanghai deer, these are the animals which we need to acquire as soon as possible. And we have to increase some visitor amenities and awareness and education program. Already we have one Darshini program, but we can planning to develop more and more such packages for school students, for colleges, and some other people who are very much interested in nature and wildlife. And we are also planning to have some internship for the college students and the students from the veterinary college. And these are some future development, like we for publicity and signages, we already have one mere van, as I have already told. So what we are planning after this pandemic is over, so we are planning to send this van to all the mandals of this district and nearby district, just to create awareness, just to sensitize people about the wildlife, and to give wild publicity through the hoarding and signages in the entry and the exit of our district, and publicity through the radios, press, electronic, and social media. And the future plan is the installation of some souvenir shop and some more visitors amenities to be created in the future. So that is all from my side. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for the extremely interesting presentation on the vision and the history and the current status and of activities in your zoo. We'll be taking questions, and we will first start with Dr. Sharma. Yeah. So the first question for you, sir, is that there are more than 600 individuals of four-horned antelope housed in Indian zoos. How can this relatively large ex situ population help in the conservation of the four-horned antelope?
Okay, that's such a good question. And if some of you may have noticed, a lot of the work that we managed to do about understanding the species in the wild was only because we were able to conduct some experiments. Like we did cafeteria experiment to understand their diet, which could only be done in a zoo setting, and also some of their behavioral intricacies about what happens when they leave the preorbital gland marking. So we were able to collect to observe some of those in close quarters only in a zoo. So I think to begin with, I mean, zoos play an incredibly important role in letting people know that exists a species like the Chosinger, right? I can say it with fair bit of confidence that a majority of people in India don't even know that a Chosinger exists, and that too in the country. And why is it so rare, and why is it so special? So to start with, I think zoos play an important role in communicating or showcasing what we have as our natural heritage. But to add to it, I think some of these zoos can, if they're able to sustain the population with fair bit of genetic diversity, then this population can be treated as a captive population, which can over time be tried and reintroduced if that is a goal somewhere. Having said that, uh, with species such as the Chosinger, which are very sensitive to a lot of local habitat characteristics, it's a lot, it's easier said than done. But I think one of the key things that can be done is, encourage uh, students from various institutions to do some very basic foundational research about these species, behavioral research, even genetic research, try to understand, because we don't know anything. If you ask me about genetics, I have absolutely no idea. We don't even know whether the central Indian subspecies is different than the South Indian subspecies. So I think we are still, in fact, if you go to IUCN website, Chausinga is still a data deficient species. So I think to start with, really encouraging institutions, organizations to to be able to do some very basic observational ecological research, starting from the zoos, and then in due course of time helping uh, as captive population. I think that's possibly the best way to go about it. But yeah, it's wonderful to know that there are 600 captive individuals. I had absolutely no idea. They can play a very, very important role in understanding the species quite well. I mean, the whole I mentioned, the South Indian population seems to have very little front pair of horns. Central India, in Panna, the front pair of horns grow as big as the back pair of horns. And that itself is a fascinating difference between population, subspecies, we don't know. And zoos can play a very important role in doing some very basic genetic research about trying to understand the subspecies, if at all it exists. So far, we call it a monotypic species, that it has no subspecies at all. So there we go.
All right, sir. The next question for you is in line of that only.
Okay,
It says,
Arundhati,
are you seeing?
good evening, Arundhati.
Yes.
I have one question for Dr. Kaustubh. Uh,
Please.
this is
Yeah.
regarding the in situ, yeah. This is regarding the in situ conservation of Chosinger, because in my area, in Pakhal Wildlife Sanctuary, we have some sizable population of this Chosinger species. So I just wanted to know, is there any study on the what are the preferred grasses and fodder species or the fruits for this species, so that we can plant this species inside our sanctuary and we can help to conserve this species?
It's a very good question. I think the best way would be to have a few control plots, because if I say that in Panna or in central India they consume tendu and um, a lot of the frugivorous or the fruit bearing plants, and that's specific to that region, right? I think if the population in your area is already a sizable population, and if it really is facing a risk of overgrazing, then maybe one can protect a few patches from certain level of grazing. I'm not saying completely prohibit grazing entirely, because at times it becomes completely counterproductive, but I think one can try that and see. Ultimately, it's those plants and trees which bear fruits and flowers which are accessible to a four-horned antelope. That's what is relevant to the species. So rather than planting, if we can just have smaller protected chunks of the land, I think that can help.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll move to the next question. It's that IUCN
Please.
lists the species as vulnerable with less than 10,000 animals in the wild. From the time that you have studied this species till now, are you aware of any systematic assessment on the abundance or the distribution of the species? And what do you recommend to this end?
So to be honest, there are less than 10 publications that I know of on the Chosinger, even since I did this work in between 2002 and 2006. There are some distribution studies, including the one that we did. There are some abundance studies that we also published about Chosinga's population and the trends in its population over 2-3 years. And right now, we are working with a few researchers who are trying to collect data from within Panna, and we will hope to be able to compare the two, how things have changed. But because there's I must mention, there's a very interesting feature. You all might know Panna Tiger Reserve suffered a local tiger extinction in 2007-8. Almost the time when I was there, we had seen a decline in the populations. Now, immediately after that, for the next 5-6 years, people reported absolutely no sighting of Chosinger. Now, how does a tiger population relate with the Chosinger population? And again, I was not doing any systematic work. It was just based on what tourists and people, other people going inside, including some local people who had become friends, would report. It turns out that with tiger extinction, the population of mesopredators like jackals and even leopards, for that matter, had kind of gone up a little bit. And for these animals, Chosinger is a prey. It's a preferred prey. For a tiger, it's like a little grain in the mouth, right? So it's too much of an effort to get it. So it almost look, and now people are with tiger population recovered in Panna. People are reporting they're again starting to see a lot of Chosingers during game drives and all. So I think that there seems to be some sort of a relationship between the two. But again, I must admit, we don't have systematic data about the changes in the distribution. And if there is anybody who's interested to do this, please feel free to contact us. Please feel free to contact the various organizations. Please feel free to contact Wildlife Institute of India or National Center for Biological Sciences or BNHS or the local forest department that you are interested in systematically monitoring the four-horned antelope. I think anybody who goes out and does any research on the Chosinger, it's only going to benefit the species, because you mentioned IUCN calling it vulnerable. It also calls it data deficient, and that's a big challenge we face for a species. And let's be aware of it. Tigers are there in 11 or 13 countries. Chosinger is there only in India and a little bit in Nepal. It's a species that's truly Indian, right? It's endemic to India. It's just where we are. That's the only part in the world where you have the Chosinger. So it is very special that way, and we know very little.
All right, sir. Okay, and we have one more question. It says, what is the effect of the population due to poaching? Have there been any studies on this?
So again,
Are you aware of this
I mean, we
aspect?
have come across a few. Yeah, we have come across people who have been involved in poaching Chausinga, but it's too small an animal to invest too much of energy in. So it's often a bycatch. Typically, or most efforts on poaching or bush meat hunting in these forests is for larger animals. But then, yes, I mean, Chausinga does get poached, but it doesn't have any other value. Its skin doesn't sell for anything. Its skull has no particular value. Its bones have no particular value. So that way, it's not a target species as much as it is for just its meat. Where again, if you have a larger ungulate, people would typically prefer that.
All right. And we have like two questions in the biology wherein they're asking what are they diurnal or what do they do at night? Are they more active or are they sedentary during that time?
You'll be surprised. I think all species they're very good at adapting. Areas which are rather well protected, Chausinga is typically diurnal. In fact, they're a little lazy, if you might want to call it. You don't see them early morning. You start seeing them slightly later in the day. Uh, and in the night, it's almost, I mean, we never really saw them on any camera traps at all. But the moment you move out of a protected area, then you start seeing Chausinga sort of active, even in the night as well. So they seem to try and figure out a way to avoid detection, right? To avoid disturbance. And if there's a lot going on in an area, they'll just stay hidden through the day and then start coming out late in the evening, graze a bit. But then again, that also puts them at greater risk to predators. But then on the contrary, for them it's perfectly fine if they can stay hidden. They prefer that. But whatever we could study them, they were primarily diurnal.
All right. And I think we have one more question on the food, which I think Ms. Arpana has already asked you. So that's about it for the questions for the Know Your Species part. We are taking now questions for the Kakatiya Zoological Park. Ms. Arpana, are you there? Yeah. Okay. So the first question for you is that the zoo is well placed for growth and development. What is the vision for the next 5 years?
As I have already discussed about the future development, what we are planning, but we will be more focusing on the conservation breeding, because right now we are doing only captive breeding. So conservation breeding of some species like Chausinga, the captive breeding has already been done in the captivity. So we are planning to have conservation breeding, plus more and more awareness, education and awareness program, I would say. Because Dr. Kaustubh has already mentioned that we should involve more and more college students as well as the students who can do some research on the different species. So we have a lot of species, like we have mouse deer also, and this Chausinga and some other species. So we'll definitely involve more and more students as well as for the research as well as for the education of this for future. Thank you.
Right, ma'am. And the next question for you is that you are managing a wildlife sanctuary also, I think, as your additional charges in addition to your current posting. What is your opinion in the challenges you face as a zoo manager, and are they more as compared to being a protected area manager?
Both here I would say ki both areas have their own problems as well as some I would say some issues or some challenges. So both the area we have to give our 100% and we have to uh, check each and every aspect of our management. So it is equally, both are difficult, and it is I won't say ki in situ or ex situ which one is more difficult, but both are equally difficult. And we have to give our with our staff, with our dedicated staff, we have to manage both areas as well. Thank you.
All right. All right. The next question for you is, for the summer management of animals, can they be provided natural hides as compared to the shade net that you're providing?
Yeah,
Is there an advantage?
actually, yeah, this is very good suggestion, and that's what we are doing now. We are planting more trees inside our enclosures, like bamboos and some other species, to provide natural height to all the animals. So we have done the plantation in last 2-3 years, and we'll be continuing this efforts in coming years. So that will be done.
Okay. All right. And one last question. All right. Okay, ma'am. And one last question for you is, it's more of a how you foresee this. It's like, how do you think we can make zoo animals more famous, like Fiona of Cincinnati Zoo? And what do you think that the presence of guides would help this? Fiona is a hippopotamus at the Cincinnati Zoo, and it's quite famous. Do you think we can? Do you have any? I mean, it's more of your what is your viewpoint on it? Do you think? What do you think we can do to showcase animals like that? And further is, what are the captive breeding? What are the captive breeding programs in your zoo?
Yeah, right now, first I'll take the question on captive breeding. So right now we are mainly focusing on Chosinger and mouse deer in our zoo. So these are the two species we'll be focusing, and some other species, exotic species like ostrich, rhea bird we have. So that also will be focusing on the captive breeding. The second, just to showcase the our zoo and the animals in our zoo, will have to do a lot of publicity, I would say. And because here I would mention, in before 2017 we didn't have leopard in our zoo. So in 2017 we introduced the leopard and we named it Deva. So now everybody knows the name. Everybody will be asking, how is Deva? So like this we are planning now. The next step is to, because we are constructing new enclosures, so next we are planning to bring lion and some other more charismatic species, and we are just one second. This only some after breeding or some captive breeding of some species will definitely choose some species to highlight this zoo, and in coming years we'll definitely will be working on it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was more of a I guess, your visionary, your thoughts on the entire thing. Thank you so much for answering it. So with this, we conclude today's session. I thank the speakers, Dr. Sharma, Ms. Apar, and taking time out from the schedule and speaking to us today. With this, we are going to be completing week 5 in Kakatiya Zoological Park on the 24th. Yes, on the 25th. And post that, we will then be moving on week 7 of our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and I would request the audience to do join in and and come in for the next species, that is a lion-tailed macaque, and Arignarana Zoological Park would be the next zoo in focus, and we will be hosting these talks again on Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. So thank you so much, and thank you to the speakers once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Arundhati. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.